All right. So on the Peter and the popage, yeah, I would say this. Like, I think that if I was talking to someone, I wanted to argue with them on this. I think this is how I would do it. I would say, why would you assign a title that was only valid within an organization to a person that was alive at least 300 years before that organization began? The Catholic Church, they use the word Catholic, of course, because it's really the word universal. I believe that's in Latin, if I'm not mistaken. But that's really what the word means. So there was probably talk of this being the Church of God, the overall church, the universal church. They obviously didn't call it the Apostolic Church because the apostles were still alive for some of this stuff, And so I think what you got is that really when we talk about the Catholic Church, I think what I would be talking about is the organized part of that. When they started having bishops who were hired and paid essentially to be bishops, and that's all they did. They didn't have any second vocations. There were cardinals and bishops and popes, okay? And none of that was happening up until, and I'm not sure it even had a pope in the 4th century, if I'm not mistaken. That was called as such by any of the Christians of the time. So that would be my argument to these people is like, why are you ascribing a title that was made in the Catholic Church that doesn't exist in the scriptures? Because if it was his title, he was actually a pope, then it would have been said in the scriptures. It would have been talked about. But no, he was a bishop, just like there was a bishop of Antioch and Jerusalem and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He was a bishop. Now that word bishop, of course, is really just it's a teacher. He's a leader. So that also was not an official title of any kind of organized church. It was just a way of denoting the leaders of the church body locally where they were. So what you've got in Rome in the 3rd and 4th century is that organization starts to occur where the Roman Church, of course, starts to get cozy with the emperor. A lot of the persecution started falling off at this point in Rome, and that's when Constantine starts getting cozy with the bishops. He's like, this church thing is pretty powerful, and I'm going to get cozy with the Roman Church. And then what we see is the Roman Church tries to exert power over the other churches in other areas like North Africa, the Berber churches, the churches in Antioch, Alexandria. So then they start sending emissaries out from the Roman Church who go to the other churches and visit and then tell them, oh, here's what the Roman Church is doing. You need to do what the Roman Church is doing. The emperor is on our side, blah, blah, blah. All that kind of nonsense and garbage. Instead of having these autonomous churches everywhere, now the Roman Church is sticking its nose into everybody's business. And I think with the hand of the emperor involved in that a little bit. And then, of course, the Council of Nicaea is when they take this Arian controversy, they codify the Roman Church's beliefs into Trinitarianism, and they start excommunicating anyone who doesn't agree with them from all the other churches. Does that sound a little sneaky, a little devious to you? I think it is. And, of course, I've done my Cataclysm of Rome series. The first video in the series is about this topic of that whole controversy, very detailed. So I think that's what I would have to say is that, yes, Peter was Jesus' initial appointment for the Church of Rome. He was the missionary who was going to start the Church of Rome. But a couple centuries go by, it starts to... Peter's long gone, of course. He's martyred. Peter's long gone before 70 AD. And then the Roman Church starts to assert its authority over other churches, and we start to have problems with the actual organization of the Catholic Church. So I just would say to people that are really on the Peter was the first pope thing to be like, there were no popes at that time. There were no leaders over the church. Jesus Christ was the head. And if you read the church fathers, you'll see them saying that Jesus Christ is the head of the church, of the body of believers. And so I just, I think that's where I would go with that. I hope that helps you guys a little bit. If you're trying to talk to somebody who, of course, has that view, you've got Catholic family, friends, or whatever, that coming from that, I don't know if that helps, but. Thirsty for truth, you say, is it true that most of the early church fathers' writings come from Eusebius writing down what they said? Also, what's the oldest copy of Eusebius's writings? Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure I have all the answers on that. It wasn't Eusebius, though, because he was in the Council of Nicaea, so his writings were probably around 320 AD, that time period, about the time of the council, really. But Eusebius was an Arian, for the most part. So he was not in league with the Roman church so much. Although he knew all of them, he actually, apparently close to Constantine's death, he might have actually kind of converted Constantine to Arianism, because Constantine vacillated between Athanasianism, Trinitarianism, and Arianism, which is really interesting. But I don't think, though, thirsty for truth, that your statement that says most of the early church fathers' writings come from Eusebius. He does quote a lot of them. Now, there's a few church fathers that we only know of because either Eusebius or another one wrote about them and maybe mentioned a couple things that they said. But for the most part, I believe we have separate manuscript evidence for most of the writings of these early church fathers. I believe we do. I could study that more to be more positive about that, but at least that shows you where I believe that I understand all that, and you can look more up on your own. All right. What else, guys? I think that we may move on to the next one. Try to get to all these topics today. All right. So let's go on to the next one. And that is Dan Free actually pinged me on Telegram this morning. He said he wasn't going to be able to attend, but he wanted me to talk about Jeremiah 31:27. So let me do that. Let me get Jeremiah 31:27 on our title. And let me pull that up. Okay, I got the screen up. All right. So let's go over to my app where we can search the scriptures. Just put in Jeremiah 31:27, which says, "Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Judah with the seed of man and with the seed of beast." That's interesting. So you can understand why Dan asked about this verse. It seems very strange, and off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to, like, what does this mean about the seed of the beast? So let's look at the Hebrew next, because I want to make sure we understand the words here fully before we go back and then read all the context and get more of that. Let's make sure that each of these words means what we think it means first. That's kind of my approach often with these things. So let me zoom this in. You can see with me here. And of course, I'm mostly focused on the end of this passage. "Behold, the days are coming, says Yahweh, that I will sow." And sow here is, of course, like scattering seed, just like a farmer would sow seed in his yard or fields. "That the house of Israel, Bet Yisrael, and the house of Judah, Yehuda, with the seed of man and the seed of," and it says, wow, do you know what word is used here? Do you see this? This is the word used, behema, or literally it's the root of the word behemoth. That's really interesting to me. It's really interesting. Let's just keep that in mind. It also, of course, as Strong says here, a beast, animal, or cattle. So let's keep both things in our head. But this interesting root of this word, behema, very interesting. So let's keep that in our heads while we read the context surrounding Jeremiah 31:27. So let me go to the full chapter here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Y'all can see it too, hopefully. At the same time, says the Lord, I be the God of all the families of Israel, and they shall be my people. Okay, this does sound prophetic. Without going back, I want to go back to the last chapter and see here. The word came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Thus speaks Yahweh of Israel, write these words. The days will come, say the Lord, I will again bring captivity of my people Israel and Judah. So this is him prophesying the captivity of Israel and Judah, and cause them to then return to the land that I gave to their forefathers, and they shall possess it. So this is prophesying their captivity and then their return back to the land in the time of Ezra. And these are the words the Lord spake concerning. Okay, let's see. I'm just going to skim this real quick. So I have, in case I see anything that will help us. Okay. I will restore health unto thee. I will bring again the captivity of Jacob's tents and have mercy on his dwelling places, and his city shall be builded upon her own heap. So they'll rebuild the city. Out of them will proceed thanksgiving. The whirlwind of the Lord goes with a fury. Awesome. Yes. Okay, so back to our chapter 31. And at the same time, I will be the God of all the families of Israel. And by families, I'm thinking here, when I see that, I think the tribes, right? The families, the tribes. Families. That's interesting. Yeah, it means people, nation, clan, tribe, species, whatever. So it's a clan. So it means the tribes. It means the tribes of Israel. All right. So the families of Israel, and they shall be my people. So back to full chapter. I will build thee, thou shalt be built, O virgin of Israel. Thou shalt again be adorned with thy tabrets. Make merry. Plant vines on the mounts of Samaria. Interesting. Okay. I will bring them from the north country, gather them from the coasts. They shall come with weeping, supplications. My father to Israel and Ephraim, my firstborn. It's trying to go quick through here to get down to 27. They shall come and sing in the height of Zion. Zion is in heaven. It's at the throne of God. So they will sing in the height of Zion and flow together to the goodness of the Lord for wheat, wine, oil, the young flock and the herd. Okay. Shall the virgin rejoice and dance? So, one of the key components of a lot of these prophecies is that not only was God going to restore them to their land, but that actually was the promised land. The promised land also refers to heaven, their heavenly destination, the rest of the Lord's rest, where he went, of course, in Acts to prepare a place for the Christians and the Israelites that were, of course, Christian. So, just remember that is there. It's always there when it talks about Zion. He's going to restore them to heaven at some point. I will satiate the soul of the priests with fatness. My Lord, or my people will be satisfied with my goodness. A voice in Ramah, weeping, lamentation, weeping for her children. Rahel refused to be comforted for her children because they were not. Thus says the Lord, refrain thy voice from weeping and thine eyes from tears, for thy work will be rewarded, and they will come again from the land of the enemy. Again, he's reiterating this is about the return of the people into the land of Jerusalem. And there is hope in thine end, says the Lord. Thy children will come again to their own border. Okay, he's reiterating again and again. Is Ephraim my dear son? Is he a pleasant child? Since I spake against him, I do earnestly remember him still. Therefore, my bowels are troubled for him, and I will have mercy upon him. So Ephraim is being included in this prophecy with Israel. Set up the waymarks. Set thine heart toward the highway. Get ready to go, he's saying. Okay, so this is the context in which we sit now with this passage. They shall use this speech in the land of Judah and the cities. I will bring again their captivity. Okay. Habitation of justice, mountain of holiness. Yes. Okay. And there shall dwell in Judah itself and all the cities thereof together husbandmen and they that go forth with flocks. I have satiated the weary soul and replenished every sorrowful soul. Now we're getting close to our verse, so my focus is 100% right now. Upon this I awaked and beheld, and my sleep was sweet to me. So he awakes from the vision. He's seeing all this stuff. And just note that he just saw Judah dwelling and cities thereof, husbandmen going forth with flocks. Okay, now that's important to note because, again, the passage, the verse we're looking at has that word beasts. So we just saw where it's talking about that they would be in their cities, they would have flocks and be shepherding flocks of animals. And now it's coming to our verse. Behold, after he wakes, he says, behold, the days come, says the Lord, that I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Judah with the seed of man and with the seed of beast. And it shall come to pass that like as I have watched over them to pluck up and to break down and throw down and destroy and afflict, so I will watch over them to build and to plant, says the Lord. So if Dan Free, you do get a chance to watch this back after reading this through and really hammering these verses to see what is being talked about, we can only assume that even though this sounds strange to our ears, that it says, I'm going to sow the house of Israel and the house of Judah, scatter them like seed, with the seed of man and the seed of beast. I think that in the context, what's being talked about is a reference to this growth, this rebuilding, where he's going to put them back in the land. They're going to grow. They're going to have children. They're going to procreate. They're also going to have flocks of beasts and animals, and all this produce and gain is going to be theirs once again in the land. So to me, that is what verse 27 is talking about. It sounds very odd to our ears, and even that root of the word beast, behemoth, you understand now why behemoth is an animal creature, because the same root for behemoth and behemoth is there. It's for a beast or an animal. But I believe in this context, it's not referring to the beast of Revelation. It's not referring to behemoth. It's referring to the beasts of burden, like farm animals. He's saying, I'm going to bring you back in the land, put you back, grow you, rebuild you. You will have flocks and herds once again. Okay, because they don't have that stuff while they're in the captivity in Babylon. So I hope that helps, Dan Free. I know you're not on here probably to say anything about it, but I hope that gets you there on that passage. Stacia, you ask about the serpent seed, and you think it may have been planted in humanity in the garden, and that it makes sense when the number of the beast and the number of man is 666. Well, whenever I hear serpent seed, I always think of who's the guy? Is it Ron Garcia? Is that his name? Is that his name? I always forget his name. Zen Garcia, not Ron. Zen Garcia. Yeah. You guys got it. Yeah, I always think of Zen Garcia because he's the one I first heard talk about that. I mean, I think he continues to talk about it because I think he believes it. Since I've heard that theory, and Stacia, you know me, I've studied a lot of writings, tons. I have yet to find any real evidence of that. I haven't run across any. You'd think that if that was a thing, that I would find that a few times. I think Zen Garcia mentions the Kebra Nagast, right? And if I pull up the Kebra Nagast, and by the way, even if there was a serpent seed theory that was correct, I don't believe that Jeremiah 31:27 is related to that at all. Okay, this passage is definitely about the people coming back into the land and then growing themselves and their flocks and their cattle and all this other stuff. So it has no relationship regardless, just to get that on the table. But if I go back here, let me go in the tool here, and I have the Kebra Nagast in my tool. So let me search it real quick. see if I can find the place, because I think I've done this before. I think I'll just search for Cain, maybe. 10 results. Okay, chapter 3 is the birth of Cain. Chapter 3 is the birth of Cain. Let's see here. And I go up from Adam and say, God is king in truth, for him praise is meet. He appointed him under Adam to be king over all he appointed under him Adam to be king over all he had created. He drove him out of the garden because of his apostasy and through the sin of the serpent and plotting of the devil. And at that sorrowful moment, Cain was born. When Adam saw that the face of Cain was ill-tempered, and his appearance was evil, he was sad. And when Abel was born, Adam saw his appearance was good, and his face was good-tempered. This is my son, the heir of my kingdom. So I don't see anything about the serpent there. Chapter 4. This is interesting. So chapter 4, verse 1 of the Keber Nagast says, he who has the good-tempered face, meaning Abel, shall be the heir of my kingdom. And secondly, because of his sister with the beautiful face, who was born with him, who had been given unto Abel, even as God commanded them to multiply and fill the earth. Now the face of the sister who had been born with Abel resembled that of Cain. Interesting. So is he saying that the sister that was born with Abel, and there's other texts, by the way, that talk about that that Abel and this sister were twins. Okay, they were born together. It sounds like it's saying that initially, because she was born with Abel, she had a very beautiful face, a good countenance, a pleasant look about her, or whatever. And then that it changed. It changed and then resembled that of Cain, it says here. She had the beautiful face, and she was born with him and had been given to Abel, even as God commanded them to multiply and fill the earth. But now the face, so as God commanded them to multiply and fill the earth, now the face of the sister resembled that of Cain. And their father had transferred them, the two sisters, when giving them in marriage. And thirdly, because the two brothers offered up sacrifice, God accepted that of Abel's and rejected Cain's. And because of this envy, Cain killed Abel. Again, I don't see anything here referring to the serpent seed at all. So it's tough. It's tough, isn't it? Let me see if by any chance I see anything else related to this. These are generations. That has nothing to do with serpent seed. Chapter 6. The accursed man Cain, murderer of his brother, multiplied evil and did likewise, etc., etc. Nothing about the serpent. But they were bidden, apparently by Adam, not to mingle with the children of Cain because he was evil. He was an arrogant tyrant, a divider of the kingdom. So anyway, I'm not gonna spend any more time on the Keber Nagast. It's one of my less favorite books because it's a little all over the place, and it has a lot of history of Ethiopia that I don't know what to think of. It's not, of course, from the Bible. It's different. Not necessarily contradictory, although there may be a few contradictions. I have it here in my tool because I do like searching it, seeing what it says, and then bringing that forward. But in this case, like, the only other thing I'll do real quick is just see if serpent, how much is that in there? It's the passage we just read. Yeah, there's nothing here about serpent seed. I could dig more about. I may do that another time. So, all right. So let's leave that there for now, I think. Annie O, I was reading from the Keber Nagast. It's a Ethiopian book that they keep along with their Bible. It's a very well-known ancient book, Although again, it has some interesting stories. It actually talks about like Solomon and Queen of Sheba and different things like that, things that are not in the Bible. So it has some really interesting historical narrative. It also mentions some interesting stories about the Nephilim. So that's another reason I really like reading it. But again, so Pepper Van Camp, you want the link to the Kebra-Nagast? Well, it's on my tool. This tool we're showing is my website. It's part of my website. So if you go to my website, at the top is a link for app. And you do have to sign up for this to be able to see all these books. So if you go there and you register with me, temporarily, it's in a beta period, I will give you access to those books, and then you could look at the Kebra-Nagast. But it's also online in various places, so you could find it if you go searching for it. All right. Let's go on to that next Bible verse that Naomi asked about, and that's Matthew 5:19. So let's talk through that real quick. Matthew 5:19. All right. So, just as we were doing here, let's go to Matthew 5:19, and we'll see what this verse is all about. So it says, whoever shall break one of the least commandments and shall teach men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them shall the same be called the great in the kingdom of heaven. Right. So Naomi, if you don't mind, can you add any flavor to your question? Did you just want me to read it and give you my take? Or is it specifically regarding something like perhaps the law? A lot of Torah observers would come to this and say, well, see, he tells you got to keep all the law. He says the commandments. He's meaning, yeah, the Hebrew roots people. So that's what you're talking about. Yeah, that angle. Yeah, so let's, of course, expand Matthew 5 here and look at what are we talking about in Matthew chapter 5. Do you guys know what Matthew 5 is, right? It's the Sermon on the Mount. Okay? It's the Sermon on the Mount. So, verse 19, we just read down here. Whoever shall break one of these least commandments. What was that we just read? Wait, these commandments. So let's do this. Let's dig in. Make sure that the Greek says that. Yes. See how this in the Greek, commandments, entolon, teuton. And teuton is this. It's an article that refers directly to what you're talking about. The word these is an absolute appropriate translation in English. There's no problem here with the translation at all. So when we run across that in English, whoever breaks the least of these commandments, it's contextual. What commandments is he talking about? What commandments? So let's go up here. Well, let's start up further. He opens his mouth and he teaches them, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those that mourn. The poor in spirit will inherit the kingdom of heaven. They that mourn will be comforted. The meek will inherit the earth, the land. Those that do hunger and thirst after righteousness will be filled. The merciful will obtain mercy. The pure in heart will see God, the peacemakers. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You noticed in all of that, just right there alone, the Beatitudes, so to speak, did he once mention anything related to the law? Anything at all? Zero mention of the law up to this point in this Sermon on the Mount. Zero. No mention of the law. No Mosaic law at all. All right. Continuing. Verse 11, when men shall revile you and persecute you and may say evil things against you for my sake, rejoice and be glad, for great is your reward in heaven. Is your reward great in heaven for following the law? Or is it what he just said, which is, if you are persecuted for my sake, Christ's sake, you will be rewarded for that. Okay, so this doesn't really sound like the law at all. You are the salt of the earth. If the salt loses its savor, wherewith will it be salted? It is good for nothing to be cast out. You are the salt of the earth. Does he say you're the salt of the earth because you're going to follow the law? No, he just gave you a list of things. How are you the salt? Because you're poor in spirit, you're meek, you're merciful, you're pure in heart. Verse 14, you're the light of the world. A city that's set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bush, but they give it to all that are in the house. Let your light shine before men that they may see your good works. Now, he still hasn't mentioned the law. Now, of course, the Torah observers are going to come to that verse. They're going to say, it said works, you see? That's the law. But he hasn't mentioned anything about the law yet. He says then he gets to the law in verse 17. Think not that I am come to destroy the law. Why would he say that unless he just said a bunch of things that had nothing to do with the law? So he's trying to fix their understanding as the Jews are listening to him saying these things, because he has come saying, I am the beginning of the kingdom of heaven. I'm setting it up. And when he starts teaching them, he says, how are you going to be a part of it? By being meek, by being peacemakers, by being poor in spirit, by standing up for me. So to fix the Jewish understanding, because they're thinking, why isn't he teaching us about the law? He says, think not that I came to destroy the law because I'm not talking about it. Don't get all upset. I haven't come to destroy the law or prophets. I have come instead to fulfill it. Do you see even the language of this? He's being very clear with these people who are sitting on this hillside that are all mostly Jewish. And they're hearing him and they're worried, like, is he trying to say the law is no more? And he answers them. He says, no, I hadn't come to destroy your law. I will fulfill it. Is that not amazing? I mean, that's literally amazing. I mean, I'm glad y'all brought me to this passage. This is so fun. I love it. And in verse 18, I say unto you, again, he's speaking to Jews. Remember that. Until heaven and earth pass away, the law will not pass away until it's fulfilled, which I just told you I'm here to do. Okay? So he is saying, he's affirming that the law would have been applicable to them forever, except that he now is fulfilling it. And so that's why they shouldn't think that he came to destroy it. Don't think that. Don't think that way. Again, when all the Torah people come to me, they're like, they didn't abolish the law. You're silly to think they abolished the law. I don't think he abolished the law. I think he fulfilled it, just like he said. Fulfilled. If you fulfill a contract in legalese, is the contract still binding? Big goose egg on that one, people. Big goose egg. If you fulfill a contract, it no longer is binding, period. So what Jesus is saying here when he gets to verse 19, if you break one of these commandments, like you're not pure of heart, you're not holy, you're not helping other people, and you teach people to be the opposite of that, you will be called least in the kingdom. But whoever does these things I'm talking about, and teaches them, he will be great in my kingdom. For I say to you, he again in verse 20 knocks the law back down. He says, if and only if your righteousness exceeds the scribes and Pharisees, the highest law-abiding citizens in the land, unless your righteousness exceeds theirs, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Is Jesus not driving it home? I mean, he literally is destroying the ideas of Torah observers in the modern time right here. But of course, the Torah observers come and they'll stick on this one verse. They'll stick right on verse, what is it? Where is it? Yeah. They'll stick right on verse 18 and they'll take half of it and they'll say, look, he says, One jot or tittle will no wise pass from the law. And they say, did you see that? See, he said, the law will last forever. That's the argument that the Torah observers make. They look at the one phrase out of verse 18 and none of the context. And then they tell us all we've got to still obey all the feasts that pointed to Christ. We got to still, if we could, we should do sacrifices. Is that what they say? I don't even understand that. That doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, thank you, Naomi. I love this. Thank you for Christ, right? Thank you for him. He relieved us of this burden. Well, not us. I mean, we're Gentiles. But he relieved the Jews of their burden of the law. If they had only really understood all of it. Some of them did. Very few. But yeah, praise him. He made it so that his kingdom is about good works. It's about glorifying your Father. Being pure of heart. Being a light on the hill. I'm going to start crying. It's awesome. The peacemakers. The peacemakers are called the children of God. Not the law followers. Praise the Father. It's awesome. Praise the Father. So yeah, he says the commandments, but of course he's talking about what he just told them, the things he's teaching them. So anyway. And we see the word commandments, by the way, in other parts of the New Testament. It's talking about that you need to obey the commandments. And as far as I can tell, every time that's said, it's really talking about the same thing. It's the commandments of Christ. He's the one setting up the kingdom. He's giving the commandments. So unless Christ goes off his hinges and really has a whole chapter or two where he's just telling you to fulfill the law, you got to keep this feast, you got to keep this thing, you got to keep that and do this and that. Since Christ never did that, and he wants us to follow his commandments, apparently that's not part of them, right? So I mean, the more I study this, because people bring this back to me again and again and again, I see it more clearly every single time in the scriptures like this. This is a passage where, you wouldn't expect to get that here, but when you really think about what these people, who they were, these were Jews on the hillside of Galilee, and this was Jesus telling them, look, I'm not going to destroy your law. I'm fulfilling it for you. I wonder if any of them got it at that moment and just started singing and praising God. I mean, I don't know. Probably not. They probably were confused as heck. They probably were confused. So anyway, that's fun, man. I love that. I love coming back to these passages and seeing these things like this. So awesome. Praise you, God. Praise you, Father. Whew. All right. All right, what else? I went loud there. Yeah, mic drop. Don't drop my mic. It's a nice one. I got to keep it working good. Yeah, Raina, they got mad and they killed him for this, right? Exactly. They killed him for this. Yeah, they didn't like it. All right. Next on the list, I really want to get to these topics. So let's see. It's late, guys. Oh my gosh. It's late. I'll try to go quick. Okay. Revelation 9:16. This is by Robert. Revelation 9:16. Is this Joel 2? And is it future? I guess is also part of that question. Revelation 9:16, is this Joel, same as Joel chapter 2, and is all that future? So Robert, let me try to answer that for you. All right, still got the verses up. Let's go to the Revelation 9:16. I'm having a blast this morning, guys. I really am. I had such a good time at that conference, just meeting people and talking with people. Even if, views were divergent, but just meeting people, regardless of the speakers, just meeting up with people and hearing their stories was awesome, man. I just got a lot of energy out of it. I just really feel good about it. Anyway. All right. Revelation 9:16. And the number of the army of the horsemen was 200,000, and I heard the number of them. Yeah, 200,000 is a lot. All right, I'm going to check the Greek real quick just to make sure there's no deviance in the Greek from the English. And the number of the armies, the stratumaton, of the cavalry, the hippico. Let me see. Some of these are words that are new to me, so I'm looking them up. Yeah, it's cavalry and Strong's. Okay. Dis myriadis myriadon. Okay, so that word myriad, they translate as thousands, and I'm not sure. Is that really? I'm trying to remember if myrius or myriad. They call it 10,000 or a myriad. They say, see, this is like the Helps Word Studies says this myrias or myriad word is an infinitely large number. It just means a huge number. So figuratively, it should mean a number too large to count, but they say in a strict way it means 10,000. Okay, so I'm not sure which one would be appropriate in this situation. That's interesting. You see how in like NASB they've translated at different times to 50. That's just strange. Why would they translate it to 50? 200 million, myriads. Sometimes they just say myriads, and sometimes they say thousands or many thousands. So interesting. Let's just, for the sake of argument, let's say this is just simply talking about a really large number, a really large army. So we come to this passage, Revelation 9:16. Let's go to the context of chapter 9, verse 16. So this is the sixth angel's trumpet, loosing the four angels from the great river Euphrates. So I would just caution you, I looking at this trumpet and what happens within the events of this trumpet, they're very spiritual type things. There's angels mentioned, okay? There's angels loosed. They were prepared for an hour, a day, a month, and a year to slay a third of men. Okay, now that may not be spiritual. That may be real. Okay, let's just keep going though. And the number of the army of the horsemen was 200,000. That's our myriad of myriads. And I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them with breastplates of fire, jacinth, brimstone. And the heads of the horses were as heads of lions. Out of their mouths issued fire, smoke, brimstone. And these three was the third part of men killed by the fire, the smoke, and the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth and their tails. Their tails were like serpents, and their heads, with them they do hurt. And the rest of the men which were not killed by the plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils, of idols, of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood, which neither see nor hear nor walk, and neither they repented of their murderers, sorceries, fornication, or thefts. Okay. So, the question is specifically about Joel chapter 2. So I don't want to spend too much time on Revelation 9. Let's go back to Joel and let's see if I have a lot of thoughts about Revelation 9 and the trumpet we just read about, but I'm going to reserve that for now. Let's go back to Joel. Let's go to Joel. So let me just get back to Bible. Joel, prophet Joel chapter 2. Let me see where I would imagine the word, no, thousands is not there. Let's see. Okay. So here I bet is where we're kind of focusing in on chapter 2, verse 3, 4, 5. Well, it's really this whole army. Blow the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Zion and the holy mountain are all heaven. Okay, so let's just acknowledge that. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord comes. For it is nigh at hand, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains. A great people and strong. There has never been the like, neither shall be any more until the years of many generations. A fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, nothing will escape them. The appearance is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots, on the tops of mountains shall they leap, like the noise of a fire that devours the stubble, and as a strong people set in battle array. Before their faces people will be much pained. They will run like mighty men. Neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk each in his path. And when they fall on the sword, they will not be wounded. They will run to and fro in the city, run up the wall, climb upon the houses, enter into windows as a thief. The earth will quake before them, the heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall be dark, the stars will withdraw their shining. The Lord shall utter his voice before his army. For his camp is very great, for he is strong that executes his word. The day of the Lord is great and terrible. Who can abide it? Oh, guys. Oh, guys. Here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing. Let me see something here. Robert, I'm going to have to apologize a little bit. So what I do think, Robert, for one, we need to recognize that in Acts chapter 2, Peter says, this is the time that Joel was speaking about, okay? Now, what he's really talking about specifically in that instance, of course, Pentecost has happened now. The apostles have gone out with tongues of fire that rested on them. They're speaking languages that they don't even know to all these people from all over the known world that have come into Jerusalem. And so God is fulfilling the prophecies of all the nations hearing the gospel, okay, at this moment in history. It's an amazing moment. And he says in his sermon that day, he says, this is the time Joel was speaking about. And in chapter 1, it says something very similar to, oh, where is it? Where is it? I'm going to see. I'm sorry. Let me look it up real quick. My mind's blanking, guys. I'm going too fast or getting too old. I don't know. Let's see. Okay, Acts 2 is where I want to head. Yep. These are the days. Right, here's my cross reference is what I was looking for. Joel 2:28. Oh, it's in that same chapter. It's in Joel 2. It will come to pass afterward, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. Oh, gosh. Oh, guys. Let me try to explain why I'm hesitant here. And Robert, I'm going to have to probably apologize to you, but I don't think I'm going to tell you everything that is in my mind right now, because there's some things I've been dealing with in my research about this. I definitely believe 100% that what Peter said in Acts chapter 2 is 100% true. The days that Joel was talking about match these prophecies. These are the prophecies of those days. There's a lot more to this story, though, and so when we talk about the armies, we talk about this army in Joel and then the army in the sixth trumpet. There's a lot that needs to be said, Robert, a lot that needs to be said. But yes, in answer of your question, I believe all of this in Joel 2 and in, of course, Acts 2 and in Revelation 9:16 has passed already. That's history at this point. Does that help? Without me going into super detail on every bit of this, the main thing here to realize is when Peter preaches on this in Acts chapter 2 and says, literally, this is the time. This is the prophecies of Joel coming to pass right now. He says, as it says in verse 28 down here, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. your young men will see visions. He says, he literally quotes that verse and says, this is what the prophet Joel was speaking about. So apparently this is talking about the Holy Spirit who had been sent back to earth by Christ to be with the Christians, to work with them hand in hand to build the church. They're prophesying, they're seeing visions because so much is about to happen for them. These armies, the descriptions and everything about these armies, I'll just say this, they seem to match the Roman armies very well. Very close, exact. I mean, so all of this definitely, Robert, in my view, has happened. Now, there's just so much more that I want to say about this because I'm studying some really amazing things. I mentioned this chart that I drew, and I just don't want to reveal all of it right now. It's so cool. If I can get there, I want to show you guys. I want you all to see it because it's just beautiful what God's done. It also fixes a lot of things. If I'm right in my theories here, it fixes a lot of things with some of the things like I'm talking about with the full preterist notions. It fixes some things that would help those guys understand why they make certain arguments about full preterism views. It really exposes why they try to make those arguments because they don't see this stuff. They don't see it the way that it is. So there's some things I really want to tell you all about, and I'm preparing it. I'm so excited to do it. I just don't want to talk about it right now, but I think I answered you, Robert. No, Puckwaji, no. I've got to be calculated and careful in how I do things. I got to make sure that I give you guys what you need when I present these ideas, that I have fully vetted them. I feel that's my responsibility in this, in this relationship we have. It's my responsibility to not just bring things half-heartedly, but to really put my heart and soul into them. So give me that chance with this information, but I think we've answered Robert's question here. So John Fry, thank you for saying that, brother. All right. Stacia Logue, your correlation between the little season in Revelation 6 and Revelation 20, and then Big Boy's topic. I do want to do all of them. So it's going to go long today, and I apologize. If you got to go. And if you want to catch it later this week, catch it. That's fine. I understand. It's a long time, but it goes so fast when I'm just yelling in the microphone the whole time. You guys are so gracious with me. Thank you. All right, Stacia, let's do yours. By the way, sister, I love you. I hope you're doing really well. Stacia's one of my OGs, guys. She's one of my OGs. I love Stacia. Oh my gosh. All right, Stacia. So let's see. Let me put this on the title here. The little season in Revelation 6:11 and 20 verse 3. Okay. I didn't spell it wrong, did I? No. Let's go. Okay, little season of Revelation 6:11. Well, let's start in chapter 20. Let's do that. Let's do chapter 20 first. Bible, Revelation, chapter 20, verse 3. And I cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and put a seal on him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. So obviously it's mentioned in the previous verse. This is devil, it's Satan. He reiterates it twice. In case you didn't believe in Satan, he reiterates it twice. It's the devil and Satan. So that's the guy, Azazel, if you didn't know his angel name. All right, so let's go back then to Revelation chapter 6, verse 11. I'll keep that open there. And let's go 6:11. All right. White robes were given to them, every one of them, and it was said unto them, they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. Yes. So the words little season in the English used here and in the other spot. So let's just compare them in the Greek. Why not? Close some of these windows here. All right. So little season in 23. Here's the Greek for that. Let me open the Greek for 6:11. I've got them. Okay. So in 20 verse 3 it says, I think they're probably the same words. I'm just making sure, and I don't want to assume anything and make a mistake here. So I'm very careful with how we do this, right? So here it's little season. In the Greek it's micron chronon. Okay. Chronos is the root word for time. So it's micros, little, time. And this micros, by the way, is used for lots of different things. It's a very ambiguous type of word that means little. Okay. It's used for lots of different things. You can see if you just scroll on the right here, it shows you, this is why I love Bible Hub so much. On the right of your screen, it shows you, it just starts listing out the verses that have the word used in it, but the English. So you can read where the verses are and all the different usages at once. It's amazing. So you can see, like, when it's talking about children in Matthew 10, it says one of these little ones or micros ones, these children. He who is least in the kingdom, we just read a passage that said that, and that's the same word, least in the kingdom, micros in the kingdom. Here in Matthew 13, it's used as the smaller of the seeds. So to describe a seed, it uses the word micros. Let's see if I can find some different varying uses other than just Matthew. There's probably, this word's used probably 1 billion times in the scriptures, which is going to be the tough part. Let's see. The New American Standard translations, they thankfully list out the different ways they translated this. You can see the words they translated this word micros to: least, less, little, little while, short, small, smaller, smallest. You see, it's like our word little or small. It just means small. And that always is in relation to whatever else is being talked about, okay? So, yeah, there's going to be a ton of usages. I don't want to go through all of them. We don't have time for that. 46 occurrences. Let me just quickly go down here. Yeah, when it's talking about a little leaven in bread, it's just a little. You don't put a lot. So they use the word micros. So again, it's comparative. You know, there's a little leaven versus a lot of dough. So again, it's always comparative. So when we're talking about the little season, it's going to be comparative to something, right? So that's what we do have to remember when we actually talk about what is the little season time period going to look like. Let's see. From the least to the greatest, small, short. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that kind of just confirms what the word is. It's an ambiguous small word, and it's usually used in a context of comparison with something that's bigger, you know, much bigger. So in Revelation 6:11, I'm going to jump and show you the verses around it too. Yes, he opened the fifth seal, and I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? So this is the saints who were killed for their testimony, crying out to God from Hades, essentially, saying, Lord, Lord, how long is it going to be until you avenge us? How long? These wicked people that killed us, please avenge us. And white robes were given to these people, the martyrs. And it was said unto them, they should rest for a little season until their fellow servants also and their brethren should be killed as they were. Well, we understand, because we know the rest of the story here, that this is the people who died between Christ's ascension and his coming in the clouds in 70 AD. So these are the saints, the martyrs. This is why all the New Testament writings were also like precious to the Christians, because a lot of them were scared for their lives. That's why they give them the comfort of that you're going to go be with him. You're going to be with your loved ones in heaven someday. all these different things were comfort because they were under serious persecution, especially after the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD, and Nero started blaming the Christians and killing them off, especially in Rome. Not necessarily in Jerusalem. Just note that. Okay, so then when it says you got to wait a little season, we can understand then that this little season here is being talked about as the time between whenever this person or these people were killed, maybe in the 50s AD, 60s AD, after Nero, who knows. And that, it'll be a few years, and then when I come back in the clouds, of course, no one knew the time or day of his coming, right? He kept that under wraps, but it would be a short season. So we know this reference in this case refers to a short time span of 20 years, 10 years, maybe just a few years for some of these people. All right. So then we jump over back to Revelation 20. Now, the thing about Revelation 20 is, again, what are you comparing this little season to? It just talked about a span of 1,000 years. So it's not necessarily comparing it directly, but in the context, we just mentioned 1,000. It didn't say that was little. So the little season must be smaller than 1,000 years. It seems like it should be, right? I mean, just logically speaking, it seems like it should be at maximum 1,000 years, but probably smaller than the 1,000 years that was just mentioned, right? Okay, I think we could probably all agree on that. But again, this little season has really little reference to anything outside. And of course, in this passage in chapter 20, you see him going event by event by event. Now, the problem with most people is we don't intersperse any time in between these events. We take it in a very literal kind of Western sense of the language. And we think that he's telling us, oh, that's a sequence of events that's going to happen over like 2 days. This day, the 1,000 years, the binding of Satan ended. The next day, the battle of Gog and Magog occurs, because it says it right there in the text. It's the next passage. And then the next day, the small and the dead are put before God in the great white throne judgment. So this is just 3 days. I just interpreted that with a very horrible hermeneutic. I just made up time frames, chronology. It's obvious they don't happen on top of each other. But to then assert a chronology on this when you have no basis is wrong. And, I think that's, again, what full preterists do. They assert a chronology on this because they are saying in their heads, I am of the group and the ilk that everything had to be done by 70 AD. So because I believe that, this chronology must have been back to back. These things just shotgun happened all together and they're all over, right? You have to do that if you say you're a full preterist, you have to do that with this passage. You also have to take the 1,000 years as not 1,000 years. Again, there's no precedent in any prophecy for doing that. No precedent at all for taking a large amount of time and then saying it doesn't mean that. It means something different. It means something smaller, essentially. That's absolutely the opposite of everything that we actually have in prophecy. That's never done that way. Never. So I would just caution you because, again, we see a lot of things talked about in Revelation. We're not really given time frames on everything. We don't even know, for instance, we have no idea, do we, if the 6 or 7 trumpets were all blown in this at the same time. Like, were they quick? Was it long? Did it take a long time? Again, this kind of plays into some of the stuff that I'm talking about, that I have some theories that are running and working for me, and I'm working through that research right now. But I'm just telling you, to add arbitrary chronology, time frames to these things is not correct. It's not really correct. The only way we can really understand this stuff would be to look back on it in history. But we don't see these things happen in history. So I know, of course, the full preterists argue with me on that, but I had a full preterist this week tell me that every time there's a battle mentioned in Revelation, they're all the same battle. I mean, I don't know where to go with that. That's like nonsense to me. That's nonsense. There's not even the same actors in each of these battles. They're totally different actors. Totally different events in the Battle of Gog and Magog versus the Revelation 19 war against the kings of the earth. Totally different. The princes of the land, actually. It's the kings of the nations in that. It's totally different people. I just, anyway, I don't want to go on that. Anyway. Stacia, you ask if we're still waiting for the apostles to be avenged because we're in the little season. No, because that's a different little season in Revelation chapter 6 than what is mentioned in Revelation chapter 20. Can there not be two time periods that are in their own context called a short time, a short season? That's the way they talk. That's the way they said that. It's not that it's the same proper noun little season. It's not a proper name. So I don't see where you're coming from on that. I don't see that at all. The apostles were avenged. The ones that we were talking about, they were absolutely avenged. What do you think happened? Not only did the apostles, so by the way, here's what you need to think about. You got to think about this. Most full preterists don't know anything about this. Nothing. Okay, they ignore it completely. Think about this. Did Jerusalem and the Jews persecute the Christians? Question mark. Did they? And if the answer for you is yes, I think they did, then how much? How much did the Jews persecute the Christians? A lot? Or not really that much? We don't really have that much record of Jews persecuting Christians very much. Did Rome persecute Christians? Hell yeah. Rome kicked the crap out of Christianity. They were killing hundreds of Christians in Rome at this same time period. Not the Jews. So when we look at things like how was God going to avenge the martyrs? Was he going to take out that vengeance on only the Jewish nation, on only Israel, on only Jerusalem? Or would actual vengeance require him to take that out on someone else as well? Perhaps Rome, because it had literally slaughtered hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Christians, more than any Jew had ever killed or ever done to anyone. Do you understand that the focus that we got to have on the prophecies? And just think about, I've shared with you on this channel, I've tried my best. Most people don't even grasp it. They kind of just let it slide by. They're like, I don't even understand what you're talking about. I've tried to share with you the importance of God's prophecies against the nations, not Jerusalem, against the nations. And what he did to Rome in the next few centuries after Christ came. What did Daniel's statue vision say? Christ, the stone built without hands, would crush who? Would it crush Jerusalem? No. It was going to crush Rome. Do you think maybe we got a little, especially full preterists, we may have a little too much focus in the wrong place? Yes, God judged Jerusalem and the wickedness of the Jews. But he also said in one of the prophecies I just read, just yesterday or the day before, those who had come against his people, he was going to melt their eyes out of their eye sockets. What happened in 79 AD in Rome, in the country of Italy? Mount Vesuvius exploded and probably killed about a third of the Romans. Do you kind of get where I'm coming from? He literally melted them on their feet. I think that, a lot more consideration needs to be given by many people to the role that Rome played in the fulfillment of prophecy. So there, now we're starting to broach the topic I'm talking about, that I am preparing a lot of information to help on. Okay, a lot of it. The only way God was going to get vengeance for the saints is if he took Rome out. And you know what? He took Rome out. Talk about our God being the God, the Most High God. Praise the Father. Not only did he judge Israel, which was absolutely correct, 100%, and amazing and miraculous, he spent the next few centuries as he reigned from heaven with his saints, destroying Rome, the culmination of all the nations from Babylon to Persia to Greece. He destroyed them all. He became the authority over all. Do you see how amazing it is? The fulfillment of the scriptures that God has played out in history. And again, I'll reiterate, as I have in my Cataclysm of Rome series, it has been hidden from us. They don't want us to realize that Rome was literally obliterated by our God in heaven, and his Son, Jesus Christ, as the King from his throne, and the saints poured out judgments on them. The saints sat on those thrones to judge the nations. Do you start to get the power of what we're talking about? Oh my gosh. But you have to have the background, and I'm just getting there with my understanding of history. And I've worked very hard to get there. There's a lot of reading and stuff to do to understand the real facts of the facts, the real thing that happened. So now that I've soapboxed all morning, I hope that helps. And Stacia, I don't know if that answers your question. I know that you are really struggling with. I think at this point you just disagree with my viewpoint on. You are definitely, as far as I can tell, you either definitely full preterist or close to it, and that doesn't make me care for you any less. But I have to answer these questions in the way that I see them in the scriptures. So I try to do my best with that. I study hard to do that too. So anyway, there you go. There you got it. All right, let's hit our last topic. And that is Big Boy's topic. And thankfully, this one, I don't have to share anything. We're not going to go through any, I don't think we'll go through any scriptures on this. But Big Boy, your topic here is, the way you said it was, any advice on how to counsel somebody who has lost a husband, a lady who's lost a husband that died without the Lord, so I guess a non-Christian husband passed away, how to maintain integrity and not sell false hopes without being caustic. Oh, so I see what you're saying now, Big Boy. So he didn't believe in Christ. So how do you counsel a person and give them comfort in a time when they've lost a deceased loved one that was not a Christian? And so you can't say things like, yeah, I get it. Let's do this. Counsel a person over death of a non-saved loved one. Wow. This is one of those times, that I've had over the years with this channel and working with you guys, that it's like, I don't know that I'm qualified to talk about this. As much as I love you guys and I do my best on all this, it's much easier when you're studying facts and you just like, all those fit together. It's perfect. And he told us what happened. But in this kind of a case, this is such a hard thing. It's such a hard thing to talk about. I guess, Big Boy, if I was with someone, I'm trying to imagine myself sitting next to a woman who had lost her husband and I knew he wasn't saved, I would probably say something like, I don't know. It would depend on whether she thought he was possibly saved or not, or maybe didn't know, or if she knew he wasn't saved. So where's the comfort, right? If she knew, or if she thought maybe he was saved and just didn't know, I would say it like this. I would say, your husband may have had some faults, but he has good qualities. He was, I would try to, of course, focus on the positive aspects of his life. And he was a good husband to you. He did all these things. Children may be involved. And then I would say, as far as his destiny, I just want you to be comforted in the fact that God will do exactly what he has it all in his hands. And it's out of our hands. We can't worry about it. All we can do at this point, when we've lost someone like that, is just live the best life we can and focus on making sure our lives are right, and going forward. Now, if it was a person, again, that knew their husband was, not saved, maybe that would be a little easier because you wouldn't have to dance around it at all. It'd be more like, God gave you your husband for a reason. Even though he never accepted Christ, he never came to understand the Messiah and the things of God. God gave him to you for a reason. He played a part in your life, and maybe God used that for a lot of things you don't know about and don't understand fully. But he's still working on you, and you've got a chance now to continue on and take what you've learned and even grow from that, in the time you have left. So be present with your family and your friends, love on them, and hopefully in that way maybe still have a fond memory of the departed. So I guess that's how I would approach it. I don't know, it's so hard. So hard to think of that kind of thing and put yourself in those shoes when I haven't been in that position, I don't think, in my life. So yeah, it's interesting to think about, though. I mean, we have people on the live stream that of their family, they may be the only one that is saved. And so there may be something in their future, anyone here, that we could lose a loved one that's not saved, and it would be very troubling, of course, very troubling. Trying to put that in my head too. What would it be like? For instance, I don't want to talk about people specifically. I have a family member that is the case. They aren't saved, as far as I know, and so I have to imagine what that would be like. It'd be sad. It'd be a sad day for sure. Very sad day. Yeah. So I don't know, big boy. Does that help at all? You say this, big boy. You say she's an atheist. Sorry, I typed sloppy because of mobile. They both were atheists, friends of the family for many years. I want to present the gospel, but I anticipate she would ask me about Steve. Huh. Wow. I think at first, big boy, I would definitely try to drive away from that topic. Of course, she might drag you right back to it, I don't think, big boy, that I would be careful about starting her down a path, or trying to start her down a path of forward motion to God too fast. I would just be careful about what I say. Very choice words there, trying to not push anything, because the times like that are so much more about just the grieving. And if you can't get through the grief, then some of that other stuff won't click. It won't latch. It won't take hold. So if she's still in too much of a grieving process, and we mention too much, like, I think something that'll help you through all this is God. I mean, maybe that's a way that could be approached, but also, like I'm saying, if you're in too much of a grieving process, sometimes that just needs to happen. It needs to kind of process through a little bit. She's got so much going through her head. How's she going to live? How's she going to make it? What's going to happen next? I would almost suggest, big boy, in these cases like this, maybe the best thing to do is to just be there. Just be there for her, I don't know. If you're just there for her and you start fulfilling needs that she's got, just for friendship, companionship, maybe physical needs, maybe because her husband isn't there, maybe there's some financial, I don't know what's going on, but just in you being in the gap for her, that's going to be the biggest thing you can do. I don't know why I'm crying. I don't know. I love you guys too. I'm sorry for falling apart. I just gotta I think I'm gonna end it today, guys. I don't think I have any more to say, big boy. Yeah, that's gonna be a hard one. Just do your best to help her out. Yeah, we should. I think John Fry, you said it right. We should pray for this. Yeah. All right, you guys. I'm gonna go cry my eyes out. Y'all have a great day. I love you guys. Take care. Bye.